Yeah, I'm good
We
to go.
are.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay to record me, Jack. You've got my permission.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's actually relevant to the subject, retention to engagement, getting permissions. That's
So that, oh, you've planted this cleverly, getting permission. It's actually a really good lead-in point, getting permission. Also, I'm just thinking because we're both coaches and we give feedback, but also as leaders in at work, you will need to give feedback at certain times, but you need to set the scene for it, find the right moment and the right location, and actually ask permission. Can I, do you want to hear my feedback? And that's
Mm.
a good point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you get that permission, Jack, it'll stick. If you haul somebody into your office and say, or send a memo saying, listen, I'd like you in my office at 10:30 a.m. on da 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 da
Yeah.
to discuss matters that are of concern, or to just want you in my office. Poor person's going to worry for however
Go to
long.
sleep.
They're going to come
Oh,
in stressed, and then if you just lay it on them and say, well, so and so, this is a problem, da 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 da, they're into terror now. Their mental's firing off,
oh no,
and they're looking for the door. It ain't happening. No
that
listening going
that's
on here.
right. Very, very
Yeah.
intimidating. So that's also a really good point. Um, I mean, today's topic is from retention to engagement. So the first
Mm.
thing is you want to retain your employees. And if things are not going well, your best performing employees will be the ones leaving first.
Yeah.
Uh,
You
and
lose you lose the good ones.
they'll lose the good ones. And for all our listeners, if you run a team or a business and you're retaining your staff, you must be doing something right.
And
And
one day we'll do a program on chronic stability in businesses as well, because you do need
well,
some turnover to bring new ideas in. But
um,
Jack, what are the most important points, do you think, in retaining staff? What's the key things there for people to remember?
retaining staff, I mean, it actually starts before you have your staff. It starts when you hire them. And that might be too late for some of you because you already have teams of people working for you. But that's really how it starts. If you get the job description right, if you have a good structure in your business, you really understand what is required from the person, and then you hire the right person, not the best person or the most perfect, no, the right person for the job, who is skilled in what they need to do, but also have the behaviors that you need them to display. They need to fit into the team and the culture. When you get this right, and you got the right person in the seat, um, then you set up to a good start, and that's where it starts, and then you need to keep them. Yes, yes.
I'm
Just
going to
keep
ask
going.
permission here to put one in front. I want to put a point in front.
More one in front. Okay,
I
yeah.
think it's Plato or Socrates that said, first know thyself.
Oh, right. I mean, we can go back to Adam. Absolutely, I
Well,
agree.
what I'm trying to say is that if you're going to pick that right person, right, that right person if in particular, if you're just a one man or one woman band at this particular time, right, that the person they have to work with is you.
Yes,
So the person they've got to fit with is you. So there's
and
nothing more important than knowing your own shortcomings and knowing your own reality.
mm,
Um, and so, I often talk to entrepreneurs and say, you are the lid on your business.
mm, yeah, yeah,
Unless you're ready to transform yourself, you will be unable to transform your business. Now, funny enough, a lot of people want to hear that. They
mm,
always want to say, "Oh, well, if I get a better salesperson, I can go and hire these people," and that's a big mistake people make. because they're not preparing themselves to be the boss, and it's another way of being.
That's
From
that's that is that is that is absolutely correct. The buck stops with the leader of the business or the leader of a team. And
which is you, and you're a sole trader, and
yeah,
then I totally agree with your point. Then it's about finding the right person,
mm,
not the one that sometimes you, I remember a real estate agent once said to me, if I'm trying to buy a house through me, write a list of 10 points. If I get above 6 out of 10, chances are you'll buy it.
mm.
And then there's an issue in context of, well, we get down to engagement. We'll get onto that. But yeah, find the best fit with you behaviorally. Is that the right word?
Yeah,
As a
the
person.
cultural fit, or also, yeah, I mean, they need to have the skills to do the job. But
Mm,
if they're not fitting in the team, if they don't have the sort of team behaviors, if that's what you're looking for, then I wouldn't hire them. This would
mm.
be a big no for me, and it was in my corporate career. And we've done really well with hiring really good team players who have the right skills. And often we think, oh, they need to have all the skills, as you've just showcased with the example with the real estate agent. No, they just need to have a good, solid foundation. Nobody is perfect, including the manager, including the boss of the business, including the sole trader. Nobody is perfect. But do they have a really good foundation, and are they willing to adapt and change and work within teams? And then you can work with them.
Yeah.
And that goes into the retention part, um, because people also develop and learn new skills, become more senior over time. So you also need to help them to get there, and that's where then
Uh,
the reward comes in. Yes, yes,
and I like looking for people who can demonstrate that they have that ability to learn new skills,
mm,
that are flexible, and this is partly why um, I won't say I favor immigrants, but I certainly do not disfavor them.
mm.
People who are prepared to up and move their life around the world in pursuit of something better. There's an enormous amount of personal flexibility that's needed in that
Yeah,
that thought system, or in the experience that's forced upon you. I mean, I'm a New Zealander, and I come to Australia, and most of the world see the two of them inevitably wrapped together. But there's a lot of things that are in New Zealand are the complete reverse here in Australia. Like in New Zealand, you build your house so as it gets the sun. In Australia, you build it so it avoids the sun. In
mm.
Australia, you'd never paint your house green or blue on the inside because it's cool. And that is the reason why you do it in Australia, because it's cool.
And it does make sense.
And it makes sense. And even a background of our peoples is quite different. Um, and apparently, according to what I was taught when I did my master's degree, Australian New Zealanders are far more aggressive in terms of their business attitude. They're far more, whereas Australians tend to be more laid back, kinder, perhaps quite nicer, but a little bit nicer. And that's put down to the fact that there's a smaller bone. You've got to be a tougher dog.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, um, that's the uh, yeah. So I think that's something, and I look for that flexibility. That's where education is also important. Maybe they haven't got the exact skills you're looking for, but if they've shown an ability to learn,
That's
then
that's that's right, and that's really valuable because it does show the flexibility. And I would also throw a point in there, how they are dealing with mistakes. Are they open for constructive feedback? Do they
mm,
valuable information from making mistakes, so in the future they don't make the mistake again, rather than being closed off and not actually accepting that a mistake would have had occurred or something they could have done better. And
Mm.
I think that's extremely, extremely valuable, because then you also know you have someone who is willing to learn, willing to improve. Nobody gets it always right. That's impossible. We all have our sort of side steps where things didn't go quite so well, but
Mm.
this is a learning process, and I find this is where the vulnerability comes in, where you can want to have someone who has a healthy relationship with vulnerability, so they can accept constructive feedback. Um,
Mm.
and I also remember when I received constructive feedback when I was in the corporate and my manager gave me constructive feedback. When I think about it now, it doesn't happen so often that people actually are courageous enough and give you honest, constructive feedback. But it helped me tremendously.
Mm.
Because, I wasn't aware. I thought, oh, I'm doing that. That's interesting. So my awareness
Yeah,
was
coming
like,
across in this way? Gee, I didn't even
oh,
know.
yes, I'm a
All
little
right.
bit German. Um,
Mm.
like, oh, who knew? Um, cool.
Mm.
Who
Mm.
who knew that? And yeah, that's and I remember this. I remember the managers who've given me really valuable feedback, so I could
And
grow.
isn't that interesting? You remember that.
Yeah,
You remember that. And this goes on, you know, they got the feedback through into you received it too,
yeah,
because there's one thing to give it. We are talking before about getting permission to,
yeah, yeah,
hey, I have a
yeah,
difficult conversation to have with you. Is this a good time?
yeah,
That's a good way
yeah,
to start. Or could we make another time? Do you need some support? You know, don't worry, it's not that bad, but we need to have a straight talk. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That this
yeah,
is the way you can approach these things. But when you get that through, you honor that leader
yeah,
by remembering them. That's an honor that you remember these people and the feedback they gave you. Um,
exactly, exactly. It might have squeaked a little bit at the time as an, oh, I'm doing that. It's like, ouch, ouch, ouch.
Oops, I just got thrown into the growth zone without me wanting to be there. Yeah.
And but that's okay. I also, tell people it's okay to be uncomfortable. We try to avoid it, resist it, but the thing is, if you actually, it's like a little mind trick. If you give yourself permission to be uncomfortable with something, it lifts the pressure of, oh, I can't be uncomfortable. I should be comfortable. No, right now I'm uncomfortable. It's okay, and then it actually
Mm.
already dissipates, which it's a little mind trick. Allow
Yeah.
yourself to be uncomfortable.
And one of the things there is, if I may, I'm really getting very, very aware of this, is just be with it. Just
Mm.
be, okay, this is what is actually happening. This is actually the moment that I'm in. If I fight it, and you're just wasting energy. It's like, I wish it was something different, you know? And that's this attachment versus commitment conversation. But I also want to bring in here, look, there are tools. There are lots of profiling tools that are out there which people can use in the engagement process. Um, and or hiring process versus engagement, because in this context we talk about engagement as keeping people engaged in the workplace,
Mm.
not quietly quitting.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in the hiring process, and one of which, of course, is the being profile, which looks at
Mm.
31 ways of being that are key to being effective, to being an effective leader, to being effective and being a
Yeah.
leader. Um, and they are pretty pretty accurate in
They
context
are
of telling you a
very,
lot about
yeah.
the human you're looking at.
It is. I mean, I can highly recommend using this tool as part of the hiring procedure, and it goes beyond sort of behavioral um, um, aspects, because it goes to the root cause of things, which is really interesting. Sometimes people get told or think, oh well, I just have to be more confident. Well, yeah, confident
You know?
is sort of a behavioral. type of aspect. But then what's in the way of not being confident enough? You want to understand what is the root cause of not being confident enough or confident enough in certain situations. And that's what the being profile also does. It goes to the root cause. If
And
they,
that could be something like your relationship with vulnerability.
mm,
You know,
that's right.
am I prepared to expose
Yeah,
myself,
yeah, yeah,
which the world would read as confidence,
yeah.
but in fact, it's the health of my relationship with vulnerability that says not only do I, ideally, not only do I value your feedback, I'll seek it. So therefore, I'll stand up in front of a group of people and I'll talk to them, and we'll see where we'll go from there. So when we talk about confidence, that can be related to vulnerability. That can be
Mm,
related to your relationship with vulnerability, because ideally, one would like to get to the stage where not only do I value your feedback, but I'll actually actively go and seek your feedback. And part of
mm,
that might be that I'm prepared to stand up in front of a group of 10, 20, 1,000 people, speak my truth, speak about what I know, what I believe, and then be open to that
yeah,
feedback and
that
go, oh, because, and then there's all sorts of other things in there, like self-awareness. I'm aware that that ain't going to kill me.
well,
Uh,
I also I like to stay on vulnerability a bit because that's
mm,
such a big one, and it is often um, I wouldn't say undervalued, but not understood how important a healthy relationship with vulnerability is in being effective
oh,
as a leader in a business. Because sometimes the sort of opinion or impression is there, or the perception that people think, oh, I'll have to be the strong leader all the time. And I
yeah,
do understand where this is coming from, but people relate to leaders who can also show a certain level of vulnerability. That doesn't mean you have to, lay your heart open and share everything, but a certain level of showing vulnerability or accepting, admitting, oh my God, I could have done something a little bit better. Let's change it. It creates trust and relatability.
yep, yep. Being authentic
And
and opening the door and showing people who you really are, being
yeah,
vulnerable enough to do that. Who would have thought it? Generates trust. Goodness me, what a revolutionary thought.
and
But that's what I think I love about that. Sorry, you haven't finished your point. Where you go?
no, I just wanted to chime in. It actually strengthens your leadership. That's all I wanted to
Mm,
say. It's not weakening it,
yeah, and this is
strengthening it.
where I was going with this. Is that's what I love about the being profile, because it doesn't, when we talk about a way of being, vulnerability, it's not about how vulnerable you are or are not. It is about the health of your relationship with vulnerability, and whether you understand that vulnerability is a way of being that you consciously as a human being can use or not use as and when you choose, as a way of being and navigating the world. So
Yeah,
you can choose to be vulnerable in situation A, B, C. You can choose to use your vulnerability to give you confidence to do things that you might possibly fail at. Um, and you might have some fear around that. Um, on the other hand, you might need to steel yourself for some very difficult situations, and you might need to put on an armor of metaphoric armor, and so therefore being invulnerable in those circumstances might be just as much appropriate. The real trick is having the
mm,
awareness to know when and where and what, and having the skill to be able
yeah,
to go there. But that's what I love about the being profile, because it measures that level of skill, the health of the relationship with the way of being, and you all the other ways of being. But vulnerability is certainly a
yeah.
huge important point in the topic today: retention and engagement. Um, People want to help. Your
That's
staff want you to help, and well, in a healthy relationship, they want to help. If they've got Well, to be honest, if they're sensible people and they want their wages to keep coming and their wages to grow, then they want to help. And
Yeah,
what's really useful is if you show them how they can help.
that's that is, I mean, and we have also, I just remembered we have a whole podcast also on vulnerability, and it probably is going to come back in the future as well. Because having, what I also liked about how you explained it is having the awareness, what is a healthy level of vulnerability, and when, to expose yourself more and when to not, because there are situations where it's, not appropriate to
Mm.
expose yourself too much. And having sort of that awareness, finding the right balance, is really important.
It's
And
it's also a very powerful negotiation tool, may I tell you, um,
yes, because
because
you're the
because
negotiator. That's your
well,
background.
because when you want to build bridges, um, that you can use vulnerability. When you want to draw them down a line of almost false confidence that they are the stronger party, you can use vulnerability to draw them towards your conclusions, and even to close the deal because they want to help you.
Mm.
And
That is
it was
really, that's such a good one, um, because also that's frequently misunderstood, and people think, well, I have to be strong, I have to dominate, or I have to win this. But what does that even
or
mean?
logically
Logically,
explained to people, like, but and I know at least I won't say at least 10%, maybe 100% of people listening are going, "You're a manipulator." Welcome to the human species. Everybody is manipulating everybody else. Highly successful companies spend billions of dollars. Here in Australia, we have this phenomenon called flybys at Coles and Woolworths
one,
Rewards.
yes, yeah,
Okay, the two major supermarket chains, right?
yeah.
What do you think they're doing with the data they give you a pittance for? They're using it to manipulate you. Every half second you're in the supermarket, and even before you get there, they
And
know what you want to buy. They even know when you're going to run out of toilet paper because they know when you buy it. So,
that's also a really good point to retain customers. So that's their method of retaining customers.
well, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. But when you talk about employees, um, your vulnerability, your skill around vulnerability and authenticity, you can't fake it because the human being's going to know you're faking it, and there'll be
Yeah,
nothing that'll drive them out the door faster than inauthenticity.
yeah.
But if you are authentically open and vulnerable and caring, then you will have that reciprocated. That's the normal way humans work. We're built for connectivity.
Yeah, and it fosters the engagement. And it is also important to look at the other side of the coin when, as a manager, when you have someone in your team who is not performing quite well, or they have negative behavior, and that dragging the whole team down. It is also important to keep the engagement of the rest of the team, that you actually address it with the person,
Mhm.
in the right context. And I find, I mean, a lot of managers and leaders find that a little bit challenging, and they often or sometimes avoid these conversations. But that is also important, because the rest of the team is going to suffer if someone is not performing or
Yeah.
doesn't have the right attitude or is negative. And yeah, that is also helping to
And
catch.
the other thing that comes out of really knowing your staff, and I've talked about MBWA before, management by walking around. Uh, when you're
Yeah,
prepared to be open and vulnerable, and the guillotine operator goes, how's it going with you, John? And I go, mate, that week has been bloody miserable. He said, well, there's not much I can do about it. I said, well, how's your week been? And he goes, no, da, 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 da. And it's the truth. I didn't tell him it'd been miserable. It had been a shit week. We had to fight to keep contracts and God knows what not. That level of openness
Mhm.
sparks a real relationship.
Yeah.
A real relationship. See, I subscribe to the Chinese concept. You are either a friend or you are not a friend. There's no such thing as a business colleague. There are business colleagues that are closer than other colleagues, and this is the concept of guanxi. Your family, your nuclear family are the first people you trust. Your broader family are next lot, and then maybe the people you went to school with, maybe the people in the university, maybe you served in the army with them, maybe you've worked with them for 20 years. So you got outwards, and there's the circles of trust. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and this is also again another valuable point, because sometimes we make the differentiation, or these are my friends and these are my work colleagues. But
Mm,
you spend at least 8 hours a day at work or with your work colleagues. How can
mm.
it not be on some level also be considered as a friend? You definitely have quite a relationship with them, and um, not making that distinction so much. I mean, there are people like you and I. Everyone
Mm.
is, and
Well,
and
that's right. I,
uh,
I totally agree with you, Jack, on that, and I just want to add to that. And when we talk about the because we last I think our last podcast we talked about the fact you can actually work with people that you don't necessarily get on with. So,
oh, you can.
you know,
Interesting, isn't
but
that?
you can also you also have to get on with your relatives. Now you can pick your well, it's the same relationship. See? It's the same
you
relationship.
you definitely lumbered there, and that's right. You don't have to be like best friends with
No.
people at work, but you can get on with them, and you can respect each other, and you don't have to agree on everything. And I find the people often that do not agree on some level with you that much, they give you valuable feedback. They show you sort of certain ways of
Honor
thinking
the
that you
difference.
might not have thought about. If I'm just surrounded by people who are agreeing with me, I'm not learning anything new, and aren't I?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the another thing about being really on board and make sure that your staff, Jack, I'm all about having clear visions, clear missions, and clear purposes. And if you look at it from a business's point of view, it will have one vision, which is the difference it's trying to make in the world. Each of its employees, if properly employed, will have actually different missions within
Mm,
that vision to achieve that one vision. But I like the analogy of a rowing eight. Each member of that rowing eight has a particular job, and they spend thousands of hours before they get to the likes of the Olympics. And the boss is the coxswain calling the stroke rate. You
yeah.
know, everybody. He's not down there telling the third rower on the left hand side how that rower should pull his oar. He's just saying pull, pull, pull.
And
Yeah. And everybody does their job. That's an efficient company.
that's
And that's a company that's having fun and engaging.
yeah. And actually, I really love that example of the rowing, because you also see that there is in everyday tasks, it becomes quite mundane. If your job is just to say pull, but in the right rhythm, for such a long time, that's a really, really tough task. I mean, when I see this, I think, how can they actually stay on track? Because I've tried it. I always get I get come out of rhythm. So I'm also using that as an example. Work is not always exciting. So you don't always have the best day at work, and I need to be so engaged. Work can be very mundane, and doing the same thing over and over again. That doesn't mean you should disengage. So that's also part of everyday work. but you can still do it with you know, a level of commitment, a level of focus, and being present,
And if
and
you're
yeah,
and if you're achieving what you want, and this is where I talk about alignment. See, here's my rowing eight analogy again, right? They all want to win a gold medal, right? That's the vision, standing on the podium, okay? And they're each doing it for their own reasons why they want to win a gold medal, their own insecurities, their own complexes, and whatnot. But what they do know is that they've got the best other seven rowers and the best coxswain and the best technicians that are working on their gear and all the rest of this, and they do more work than anybody else. Then that vision is possible, and the thrill is going faster and faster and faster and faster. You start off swimming rowing it in high school, and then maybe you row for your nation, and maybe you win a World Cup, and maybe you win at the Commonwealth Games, and then maybe, just maybe, and I remember in New Zealand rowing out won the because I was old enough to do this, won the gold in the rowing eights in Munich Olympics. How exciting! And for those guys, and
it,
that's what I want. You can get that in a business, and you can get that. You can get that.
yeah, yeah, and it is absolutely. I mean, for someone like me, I really enjoy teamwork, and when as I was listening to you describing this, I thought, oh, this sounds like so much fun. Like, not actually the execution is very, very tough, but
Damned hard work.
achieving this and being within this team where everyone pulls their weight, so to speak, and everyone does their bit, and then it all comes together, and then the team wins. I mean, that is so exciting. And you remember this. I mean, I remember my projects that came in really, you know, sort of very successful, and everyone was
Mm,
challenged,
yep.
exhausted, but we did it. And it also, this for me is a real sort of team building exercise. I have a bit of a pet hate with some team building exercise, because you build your team when you work on a project, and then you actually get closer together, and everyone is engaged, even though they do the most mundane tasks every day until it's done. And I worked in software development, and sometimes when it comes, well, not sometimes, when it comes to the testing phase, and there are like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bugs, errors coming up, and the developers for probably 6 months sometimes just do bug fixing. You know, that is really, really draining. And how can they every morning come back and I'm going to do this one
Let's do
now,
it
tomorrow
again.
I'm going to do this one, and I'm like, good for you.
Mm.
This is
But
not the most exciting task.
no, but also related to that is they are learning so that the next time that bug occurs, they'll find it faster, and maybe even they have to learn new technologies to find some of the bugs that are there. Again, going to my rowing eight, they're not going to get all the strength they need to be the best in the world on the end of an oar. They've got to go to the gym. They've got to understand
That's
nutrition.
right. You got
They've got to understand all their bodies and how that works. And I talk about a mundane job. I remember having a guy, and it's coming out. I know you use a lot of printing analogies because it's been a long time in the printing industry. But this guy's job for 26 years was jogging. Jogging. Now, what that is, Jacqueline, is when the sheets of paper come off the end of the printing press, even though they look aligned, they're not perfectly aligned. And when you're going to die cut labels out of light paper, everything has to be perfectly aligned. So this guy's job was to take the big sheets of paper, put them on a vibrating machine, and make sure they're all perfectly jogged up and slide them onto the guillotines. He did that for 26 years. And you think, how could you, how
how
could
can
you
you
do
do that? It's interesting.
that?
Yes, I mean,
But it was his happy place. He took pleasure out of it being perfect. And goodness me, if anybody tried to blame him for the sheets weren't aligned, I can assure you, you heard the defense of it. There were issues there, but and I guess what I'm saying, this is about also putting the right peg in the right hole. So you're debugging technicians, and you said it right at the beginning of this conversation, find the right person,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
find the right people that are actually going to enjoy doing the
That's
hard work.
that's right. And I mean, I had this conversation yesterday. Sometimes also, um, you know, someone needs to move into a new job. I mean, I remember one of the developers just was dropping off in performance, and we had this conversation, and he said, "Look, Jacqueline, I have done software development for whatever 15, 20 years. I'm done with it." And I said, "Well, where can we find you another job?" And so we moved him over time into a different role, and he was,
Right.
happy again, and he was showing his engagement and really overperforming. Um,
And you know what? That's a wonderful idea if you can get that inside your company. But many smaller companies, that's not
uh,
possible. But
yeah,
if you
that's
have
right.
a
Yeah,
good enough relationship with people, you can have that conversation with them, and maybe there's an opportunity in a supplying company
yeah,
or a
yeah,
customer's company
yeah.
that because we talk about what we want from the universe, and magically it tends to turn up.
It does. And
So then maybe there's an opportunity for that person to move, and then you've got a friendly
I
in the
was just
supply
saying,
company
then
on
you
it.
have a
You know,
friend.
it's just yeah, it's
That
it's
that's how
and it all
that's
comes
how it
down to
works.
building relationships,
Yeah,
authenticity, vulnerability,
yeah,
and having the knowledge. And that's what I'm going to say to our listeners today. If you're really interested in finding out just how powerful the being profile is, get in touch. Details are
yeah.
down below. And um, I think we should perhaps put a link to the vulnerability cast down below. Mind you, if they're in the
It
channel, they can
it
find
it
it.
it should be in the description. There's a link to the being profile and also a couple of books. Yeah,
And get in touch. I'm just mindful that we've gone
yeah,
for 40 minutes on this already, so I'm
yeah.
thinking
I think, and there's a
we've got to let
lot,
people finish their sandwiches and get back to work.
and there's a lot in this topic. We could probably talk for it for 2 hours or 3 hours.
Well, I
Yes,
think we should need to come back to it.
we
I
come
think we
back.
certainly
Yeah,
should come back to it.
it's a
Yeah,
very
building high
rich.
performance teams. Maybe we could use that as a topic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good one. And there's a lot to it. It's quite a
Hmm.
rich topic. It's like almost like everything you need to know about running teams, running business is that.
Spilling the beans
Spilling the beans on it.
on leading with influence, and there we are. So we'll be back next week, right, Jack?
Yep, we will be back next week with more fun.